So, then in respect of that, what we're going to talk about is hypoarousal collapse. It's a pretty potent issue, and I'm always kind of following my own strategy, which is that, and my own experience, which is that I want us to be embodied enough so that we can stay present in ourselves while we talk about this. So please notice your own body right now. Please find a way to sit that's comfortable for you, but not so comfortable that you let go of your alignment. So find a way where you sit and you can feel that you also carry yourself, that your feet are in contact with the floor and your sitting bones have a contact with what you're sitting on, and that you can bring a little energy into your body by making a little push with your feet into the floor. Just find that possibility. This is a small activation. It's what I call a microactivation. It does not intend to get you into a lot of energy, but the intention is to bring enough energy into your body so that you can stay present in yourself also when we start talking about collapse. And another part of our bodies that it can be useful to get hold of is our front side, because it holds our boundaries. So what I ask you to get hold of also is your fingertips. Relax your shoulders, let your fingertips meet. Let them push just a little bit into each other so that you get a sense that your front side gathers. Notice that you can still breathe. This is not a question of making a contraction. It's a question of getting activity and life energy enough into your front side. Now I do this a little faster than I normally do, but just see how you can make it work. Think dosage. You can do these two movements smaller or larger. You can do them slower or faster. So you can go for adapting them to your body. Finding your version of what feels most supportive for you. Okay. And then sense that you can breathe. So this session came about out of an impulse in me last week. This impulse is to share some of the story that lies behind the way Kolbjørn and I are working with hypoarousal today. Because it has a personal history on my end. And I'm going to start with sharing that and then clarify the methodology that has come out of that history. So are you ready for that? Are you there? Yeah, you're nodding. That's great. So part of my history is that I have worked with absent trauma. Some traumas we manage by completely dissociating them. So there is absolute no knowledge about having been traumatized. There is only living with symptoms of something you don't know what is. That has been my history. And it took 25 years of body work before these memories emerged. That means I have 25 years of experience with working with something I absolutely didn't know what was. I just knew that something was off. Right? Now, when the memories emerged, and also before they emerged, what was the most challenging part for me was the collapse. It was the deadness, it was the absence of life energy. And that I could fall into this abyss where parts of me were just gone. I had no control over it. And what I did was the same thing as most people do. I polarized to it, which means I fought it. I did not want it to be there. I looked at it as wrong, and I looked at it as something that needed to be solved. Right? That also means a therapeutic strategy that goes for getting both myself and clients out of it. So if there was collapse, the whole mindset, and this was not only my mindset, it was also the mindset of my therapists. It was the mindset of my colleagues. It was that when in collapse, what needed to happen was to get people out of it and get back into active survival strategies like flight and fight and reaching and crying and all of that are sympathetic, where the collapse is a very deep parasympathetic state. That was pretty much the mindset back then, and it was mine too. And it didn't work. So I was clearly left with that there was a phenomenon where there was no really functional methodology available. The methodology that was there didn't work. So then I started experimenting on my own, in my own process. And the first clue I got was actually where we started just before. I started experimenting with dosing lower and lower and lower in how I worked bodily. So when I contacted my centering, my grounding, my boundaries, I started doing it smaller and smaller and smaller until I could really microactivate my boundaries, microactivate my feet, my hands, my breathing, any part of my body. And that took me gradually into a state where I had just enough energy to stay present and tolerate being close to the collapse. I had energy enough to not have to flee from it or drown in it. You get it? Those are the risks that are right there at hand when we get close to a deep collapse. It's that either we get pulled into it or we run away from it. That's understandable, but it doesn't change anything, and it doesn't integrate the collapse. So to get to a chance of integration, you need to be able to be there, witness it, be with it, and in a way find a deep acceptance of its existence. Stop making it wrong. So dosing really low bodily helped me the first step. And just see if you can connect to this idea that doing something really small in your body, it gives you the possibility of getting out of this split between either running or drowning. Just see if you can maybe do those small movements again, the small activation of feet and fingertips. And just see if you can get some sense of what I'm describing, that it gives you a new option. Kind of a third position that is more neutral. That was a big achievement. When I had come there, the next question arose in me. I wanted contact. No, I didn't want to hang out there alone. But then the question arose, what is contact there when facing collapse? What kind of contact works? And the first thing I was very aware of was what I didn't want. I didn't want anybody to come and rescue me. I didn't want anybody to get me out of it. I had tried that. That was all the therapeutic attempts I had been in, and I knew deep inside that in a way it made it worse, because it again left the hypo-aroused part of me alone. And it left it with a connotation of it being wrong. So I knew that I wanted something different. At that time, I had started in a training in what's called systems-centered therapy that works with a methodology that's called subgrouping. And the whole idea in that is that you meet in similarity in subgroups. So nobody is supposed to be able to explore anything alone. That you can explore whatever is present in a subgroup together. And suddenly those two things clicked together in me. I realized what I wanted was a subgroup. I wanted somebody to sit with me with the same containment that I had established and witness our collapse. So I could have mine and the other could have hers or his. We could be a small subgroup that could sit there and be with that collapse is there. It's part of us. It's okay. It's not death. It's just a very, very slow aspect of life energy. But we can be with it. We can relate. We can establish, as I called this session, establishing a relationship to hypoarousal. We can relate to it instead of either fleeing it or drowning in it. That was the second breakthrough. And what I did, this happened in December 2009. I still remember it very clearly. I was sitting in my home and suddenly I just knew I want a subgroup here. It wasn't the right available around me, but what I did was I started thinking of who of my friends could do this? Who could actually match me here? Who would be willing to sit here with me, acknowledge the collapse, be there, not flee, not drown? And a couple of people emerged in my mind, and I just imagined that we were sitting there together, and it changed something. It gave me a symmetrical container where some of the problem with the rescue impulse is that it is asymmetrical and it very easily ends up in dominant submission. So just see if you can touch into how many of you resonate with this challenge of being rescued. That being rescued isn't just great, and that it can actually make things worse. Yeah. And you can't see each other's hands, but there's quite a number of hands coming up. This is not my experience. There is a mutuality here. And see if you can just allow yourself to sense into what do you think, what would it feel like to go for a symmetrical relational container where everybody present could have some kind of acceptance and curiosity about a collapsed state. So we could sit there on the edge of this abyss together. Just see if parts of your body can resonate with that. And what just that idea, what does that do in you? And we don't have a space right here to hear it, but just notice it for yourselves. In my system, it's still, every time I think of it and talk about it, some part of me relaxes. Some part of me gets safe, both from the acceptance of the state, stopping to fight it, stopping to try to change something that is unchangeable. We cannot change that collapse exists. It's part of the way we survive. And it's okay. It doesn't last forever, if we can tolerate it as it is. Okay. This was pretty much the historical aspect of it. Then from those two very personal realizations in me, the low dosing bodily, the microactivation bodily, and then the symmetrical subgrouping thinking around contact. Based on those two, Kolbjørn and I, and in the beginning me, and then Kolbjørn and I, developed this methodology that we call sitting on the edge of an abyss together. Right? It's kind of a poetical language, but it speaks to exactly that. How do we stay sitting on the edge instead of falling in or fleeing? And how do we sit there together? What does it mean to be together right there at the edge of an abyss? So it holds, the title holds these two elements in it. Then we have worked with that methodology over quite a number of years now. How much since 2009? That's 14 years. And in that time, we have also integrated new elements in it. One of them discovering that for some people, doing the microactivations in a way risk to trigger them more than support them. So for some people, it's beneficial to know more bodily methodology than that one. For me personally, the microactivations always work, but I have got to see that that's not the case for everyone. So my colleague Kolbjørn has trained in what's called neurocentric exercises that work with the hypo response in a different way. More indirectly, it works with activating the joints, getting activity into them, and through that more aliveness in the joints, more energy is streaming into the muscles. So do you get it? It's instead of going directly for activating muscles, you go for getting energy into muscles indirectly through the joints. And for some people, that is more supportive, less triggering, less activating material. So today, we are using both of these bodily methodologies when we build up resilience to be able to approach hypoarousal in a safe way. Is there anything I forgot, Ayuna?
Not as I see it.
No. I think this was, I managed to do it in 22 minutes instead of 30. But I think that's actually, that works, because it just gives us more time for you to engage and ask me questions. So we do question and answer, or share some experience you had with listening to this. Before we shift, I ask you to just gently notice your body again. Just gently track. Just listen. This is a potent story. And just have the kindness of checking if any parts of you went a little distant, lost a little of its fullness. Just check out. Is it feet? Is it center? Is it your back? Is it your front? Is it your hands? And expect that it would happen. It's not that something is wrong because it happens. It happens all the time. And as soon as we talk about deep collapse, some of our patterns of how we disappear, they get touched. So just take it for granted and see if you can find a kind way right now to support these parts of your body. You can do small joint movements. You can activate muscles in small ways. And one of the benefits of doing something small is that it typically makes it easier for us to do things kindly. As soon as we are fast, we have a tendency to also get a little tougher. And toughness doesn't work with hypo. If you want to approach hypo patterns, you need to come from a kind, neutral, but kind place.